Engage fluo injectors.
Engaging fluo injectors.
Fluo reactors at 80%, sir.
Fluo containment field is destabilizing.
Emergency fluo containment protocols now. All hands brace for impact.
Brace for impact in 3, 2, 1.
Holy balls, we're back with another episode of World 101 Podcast. And as always, we're asking the ever all-important question. What else can we fuck up today? Quick tease for the third half of the show. This week, Wes and I are going to be talking about giving credit where credit is due. So stick around and check that out. Also, make sure you do the socials by gently lubricating and then finger blasting the subscribe and share button until they just squirt content all over your feed. You can and should jump into the conversation with us, though, by hitting the link for our Discord in the show notes as well. Shout out to our awesome sponsor, Imaginary Authors, helping you up your scent game with fragrances for guys, gals, and non-binary pals. More about them just before the break. All that out of the way.
Choose your fighter!
I am, as always, your host, Brawl to the Wall. Joining me this week is my lovely wife, Zoe. And my partner in crime, Wes Evans.
That's me.
Both of which on the right side of my screen, but when this is done, they might be on the left side of my screen.
At this,
or the bottom of my screen, or the top. I don't know. I don't know what Skype does sometimes.
sorry if I interrupted. I didn't mean to. There was some stuttering on my end. Raul, I just gotta say, at this point, I'm starting to get more comfortable watching porn around my parents and playing one of my recordings.
I'm glad I could help you with that emotional breakthrough.
I was gonna say, I'm just like, it's so descriptive and just so, I'm your wife and I don't even know what to do with what you just said. Like, I
can tell you what you should do. Subscribe and share. Like and comment.
You can sleep on the couch. Not even in the spare bedroom. On the couch.
I'm unperturbed at this point. So, all right. Well, we've gotten through the explicit nonsense, and this, by the way, is why this show is not for children. Let's jump to.
Oh my gosh!
Video games.
Let's start with Zoe. What have you been playing?
Haven't been playing a whole lot. I took a small moment to play some more Moncage the other day. And that was fun. I will say it's always really awesome when you get that moment of you're looking at two different, sides of the board, and initially you might be wondering, what the fuck is that for? And then, like, later something pops up and you're just like, oh my god, I know what happens with this. And especially because there was one side that had, like, been stuck on, like, that, particular image for, like, a good minute, and for the most part, I was like, what the hell is this side for? What am I doing with it? I haven't done anything with it. Several other side changes later, finally there was a thing, and I'm like, I know what to do with this!
All right, real quick. For anybody that doesn't know, explain Moncage.
Okay, so Moncage is like this camera thing in a box. Like when you walk up to it, is a camera and like this glass-looking box. And it's a cube, and you work with all sides minus the bottom. And you have to line up images, and the images change as you go. And when you line up different things in different images, they connect and they do certain things. You do all the showy things. I don't know, put a trailer for it or something, or some gameplay in the show notes so people can go look at it. It's really hard to explain, but basically that's what's it. There's different scenes and scenarios on each of the sides of this cube, but there are objects that will line up, and either when you line them up, something will automatically happen, or you need to line them up and like push a button or do something, and something will happen. And the interaction is important because it moves the scenes and each of the little things forward somehow. I'm not even gonna lie, some of the scenes that they changed to, I'm just like, why is this connected? And I know it's trying to tell some sort of story. I haven't quite figured it out all yet, but then again, I'm not at the end of the game. It's really interesting. Trying to figure out a story in pieces. Because there's the scenes you're watching, but also you find these little, like, photographs. And, yeah. But, go ahead.
Real quick, let me see if I can give maybe a slightly better descriptor, just in terms of the gameplay in the layout here. So there's a cube on a table, so there's 5 exposed sides, and as you're playing, each side will change, and each face of this cube is like a window that you can peer into. So kind of imagine the way like your 3DS works, where it's, you know, got depth to it, but the depth is inward instead of coming out at you. It's like looking into 5 separate windows all over this cube, and you're gonna rotate and manipulate the camera to get the angle just right, so that different things on different sides of this cube line up together to interact, to move forward, different elements of puzzles to inevitably change each face of the cube to the next scene to progress forward. It's legit a really clever puzzle game, and it's one that we talked about too. If you go back to the episode about has the internet ruined the joy of secrets in video games, because Moncage also has the magnificent, like the perfect hint system that all puzzle games should go with. I think I nailed it. Did I nail it?
I think that's pretty
I
accurate.
haven't played it, but I think you nailed it.
So
You should play it, it's good.
Also, while you're going, so one thing I realized with this is only my second like play with this game, and don't ask me why I didn't notice before, but there's a button you push and it'll highlight the objects in the like frame that you're supposed to use to connect to something else. And I didn't realize the different level of glowingness to indicate which one you're supposed to like interact with next. And once I figured that out in my second playthrough, it made things a bit easier. So I could focus more on like, okay, I'm supposed to, you know, work with this piece, and it's got to connect to something. Also, given where, you know, the side of the cube is, you know, there are 3 options depending on where, you know, things connect, and so that does help. Obviously, it just doesn't connect to the piece on the exact opposite side. But once I figured out the glowing, because the things will light up orange, it'll turn the scene black and white and light up the important objects orange, and then they'll be more like bright glowing orange if you're supposed to like interact with it next. And so that was helpful. And as I mentioned before, they have a tool that will give you hints, and then if the hints don't work, it'll show you a video. Like there was this one, and it was talking about a plane, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking and I'm like, what fucking plane? Like, there are no planes in any of these scenes, but I was looking for like an actual plane, and apparently it was a picture of a plane on the wall of a scene, and I was just like, oh, which the video was very helpful with. So I'm enjoying it. I will probably keep playing it out of the few puzzle games that Raul has tossed my way. I will have to say it's the one I like the most. It's most intriguing. I just like even how the art style is done. As far as I know, I don't think there's any background music in this game either, and I kind of like
Not
that.
really. No, it's a very quiet game. And not your second playthrough, just your second session sitting with it. But
Yeah, there you go.
Moncage is a lot like Gorogoa in 3D. That's what it reminds me of. So if you've played Gorogoa and you liked that, Moncage is very much in the same wheelhouse.
You have sold me.
Well worth, and not super expensive. But
That's what I've been playing.
all right, Wes, you're up. What do you got?
I've
We're back
had.
to Yakuza.
We're getting there. We are. That's been in my rotation on weeks where I haven't been recording somehow. I swear to God, it is actually coincidental. But this week, Luigi's Mansion 2 just got re-released for Switch. Kind of to decide if I wanted to spend $60 for the Switch version. I've been back to playing the 3DS version. The answer is not $60. When it's on discount, I'm probably going to get it just so I can have it on a bigger screen and be able to play it on a controller bigger than the 3DS, because I got big hands. I'm over
Which
6 feet
3DS
tall.
do you have?
I have the launch 3DS, the one that we spent too much money on at the beginning, so Nintendo, rather than give us a partial refund, let us download a bunch of free old games.
20 of them.
Yep. So that's
I will
how long.
say,
I've-
if you've not tried it, try getting your hands on a 3DS XL, like a new 3DS XL. They are surprisingly comfortable. Like, I've got big bear paws myself, so I get it. But the new 3DS XL is very comfy in the hand. It's not perfect either, but it's a mass improvement. Plus, it cuts down on the it rounds off some of the corners a little better than the original launch one did too. So it feels a little better in the hands. It feels a little less stabbity pokety, and the eye tracking is nice, which helps with the 3D effect.
Alrighty. I'll have to give that a shot.
Because it has an inner camera that'll actually like watch for the placement of your eyes. So if you move or shift a little bit, it will adjust the 3D effect to keep it in line, at least within a certain field.
Okay. I'm gonna have to see if I can get my hands on one of those. I'm imagining they're not cheap though.
If you get just like a plain release one, they're not bad. The special editions have gotten real salty now that they're out of production. But just like the regular ones, the non-special editions, you can get for pretty reasonable. Some of the later ones, like I said, the one-offs like the Pokemon one, the Zelda one, the Samus Returns one. The Samus Returns one is extra salty. I think that's actually the most expensive of the special editions because they did so few of them. Like last I looked several months ago, the Samus Returns one was like $5,000.
Ooh, yeah, no, I'm not. Oh, bless me. I'm not spending $500 just to play a 3DS game a little more comfortable.
No, you don't have to though. I'm just saying.
No.
Those are the ones that got expensive.
Yeah.
But the regular ones, like I said, that
but
give you an idea how big that is in the hand.
Okay.
So.
But yeah, Luigi's Mansion 2 is still a good game. Don't know if I'd recommend it at 60. I'm a little biased because I already have it. So, naturally I'm going to say, of course I'm not going to spend $60 for it again. I already have it. But one thing I did say in the chat, assuming you have neither of them, if you're going to spend $60 for a Luigi's Mansion game on the Switch, get Luigi's Mansion 3.
Mhm.
That I can say pretty confidently. I can say 3 is a much, much better game than 2. And I like 2. So
Right. It's not that 2 is bad.
it's just that a big part of the problem is that 2 was made for an explicitly mobile system, and the 3DS at that. Nintendo was trying to do this whole, remember, don't play for more than 30 minutes at a time while in 3D, or something like that. So they broke it down into tiny, tiny missions that take about 15 to 30 minutes to beat each, rather than one continuous mission. And sure, the Switch version's got levels too, but those levels are a lot bigger, and it feels like they stop at a much more natural stopping place, rather than coming to, alright, exploring, 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 and the MacGuffin's broken and I gotta return to the lab.
You know, I had a little bit of that I had a little bit of that feeling with A Link Between Worlds. But A Link Between Worlds at least had the workaround that you could just buy the MacGuffins instead of renting them.
Right.
So if you did a little bit of grinding up front, the rest of the game was a lot more enjoyable. But it meant that you put all the slog up front instead of pacing it.
Yeah. So
So, interesting choice.
only other game's been in my rotation this week. I literally started playing it about 2 hours before we recorded, and that's Slay the Princess.
All right, talk to me.
Alrighty, so I'm gotta be real careful with how I describe this, because everyone says, "Oh, it's the kind of game where you want to go in blind, yada yada, blah blah blah." I'm not gonna you're not gonna go in fully blind, but I'm not gonna do major spoilers here. It's a visual novel with multiple endings. You've all seen those before, but instead of the I'm saving the princess, well, it's kind of in the title. You're there to slay the princess, but you don't have to. You can just say, you know what? Fuck you, narrator guy. This princess looks cute. I'm not gonna kill her, or whatever. And when the game tells you it's a horror game, there aren't any jump scares that I've encountered yet in my about hour and a half, 2 hours of playing. But it's not joking when it says it's a horror game. Let's see.
Okay.
One of the paths that I took, without spoiling too much, there was a character who jumped awfully quick to maiming themselves. Now, I'll say the situation called for it. This wasn't like they wanted to hurt themselves, but they were a little too eager to jump to that decision.
Okay.
And so I was like, well, okay then. Not gonna exhaust the other options first? I mean,
Are you enjoying it so far?
yeah. Oh yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Okay.
Normally visual novels aren't my thing, but everyone's saying, yeah, they're not my thing either, but you gotta try it. You gotta try it. I don't know if visual novels are your thing, Raul or Zoe, but if you can, if the thought of seeing something where there are characters that self-harm, albeit in a situation where doing so is not completely unwarranted, if that makes any sense. If that's not going to bother or trigger anything out of you or any listeners, I do highly give it a recommendation so far. It's on the Steam Summer Sale, and I mean, granted, I haven't gotten to the ending yet, or the true ending, but in my playthrough, I didn't even notice how long I was taking to play it, so...
Well,
One of
on
those
the subject of that trigger, that's not a thing that perturbs me, especially if it serves the function of the story. If you go back to our episode Censor Hot, I was particularly bummed that they took out what I thought was a very integral part of the story, which was a major self-harm component.
Right.
I have the same thing for the show 13 Reasons Why, or 13 Reasons.
Yeah.
that they took out the ending. I know for someone like me, this is gonna sound really weird, but as someone that has gone to that mindset, seeing what that can look like scared me away from it. I was just like, that's the reality, that's what that looks like. You know, I mean, granted, it's a show, so obviously not real, but damn if they didn't make it look very real. And so for me, oddly, it was helpful because I was just like, you gotta be in a certain mindset to go through with something like that. And I was just like, let
I don't know.
me never get there. But anywho, yeah, no, that if it's part of the story or useful somehow, then sure. I think the only time something like that bothered me was that one card game you had me playing, Raul, where you had to like pull out your own teeth.
Inscription.
Yeah. Inscription.
Yeah.
That bothered the fuck out of me.
I say, be glad then you didn't go much further, because there's going to come a point where you like pull out your own eye.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, because for me, I'm like, that's not a have to. That's a choice. And I'm just like, that's for me is where we start getting into like weird territory.
Right. I will say though,
Inscription kind of gets into like Saw-ish territory.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to tell any artist or anybody who's making any piece of art, video game, movie, TV show, book, comic book, etc. I'm not going to tell them that any topic is strictly off limits. However, I do feel like content warnings and trigger warnings can also be appropriate for anyone who might be currently struggling with these topics or have struggled with them in the past and don't want to risk a relapse. So, just a quick content warning, there is in fact self-harm in Slay the Princess. For anyone who might be listening to this and needs to not play it as a result.
Yeah.
Thank you for the warning.
No, it's a thing. I almost don't, and I'm interested to hear that you say that, Zoe, but I almost don't view what was going on in Inscription as like a weird self-harm thing. Not in the same category as like what was in Super Hot.
Oh, agreed. It's not.
You know,
it's not the same at all. But regardless, it still falls in the self-harm category. Different reasons, but I think in this case, it's the reason that bothers me.
Right.
Anywho,
Reminds me, that's one that I should get back to just so I can see how that finishes out. I'd be really interested to see where that goes.
Anywho, we're gonna move to something else because we don't always know who our listeners are. So let's shift topic here.
Let's move on to something a little lighter.
All right.
Like, Raw, what have you been playing?
So, month or two ago, I picked up a heavily discounted physical copy of Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, and up until today, it's been sitting in the shrink wrap. But I started it, and I definitely have some thoughts. One, it opens really well. The opening very solidly reminds me of Shadow Complex, where it's just like, action, go. I'm like, cool. This has great momentum going right in. Like, you feel like you're fucking in it. There's no lead up, there's no hand holdy. It will teach you the few things that you need to know as you're going through this big opening battle scene, and it's a great way to open. And it's honestly kind of got me thinking. I'm like, this feels like the way that more games should do their intros and tutorials, is open into into something with momentum, where it feels like you're just up and going, as opposed to, I think some of the more egregious offenders are going to be ones like Twilight Princess Okami. As much as I love both of them dearly, and I do, holy shit, getting through their openings is a slog. But Lost Crown fucking nailed it in the opening. And then you start, and then it doesn't take long before you start seeing, at least for me, things that I'm just like, did we have to? But why though? Like, you get through this awesome opening scene, and then it completely ruins all the momentum that it had going for it with big fucking cutscene and killed the pace instantly and for entirely too long. I'm like, all of this did not have to be something that I had to interact through. This should have been like a 5 to 7, maybe 8 minute cutscene. Probably not even that, honestly, because you could have cut out all the interactivity. You could have actually better animated the characters in their dialogue and their speaking. And instead, you get the classic, here's the text box, and here's a still-ish image of the character that's talking. I'm just like, oh. Like, these are little nitpicks, but these are things that could have and should have been done better. There was no good reason for this other than to cheap out. And by making this an interactive piece instead of a cutscene, which is its own issue, but the cutscene I feel could have and would have kept the momentum better. It hurts the pacing so bad. And then you finally start getting into the actual like meat of the game, where you're getting into the big mountain, citadel, castle, temple, the Metroidvania of it. And it's not bad. I'm still early on. However, like I said, I'm still this early on and I'm seeing issues. And none of them are super egregious, but they're definitely detracting from the immersion. Like, it'll pull you out of the experience when it comes up. I'm seeing things like glitching in movement, like stalling out and then skipping. And it's not dropping frames, because everything else is still going. Like, there's a big water wheel gear thing, and you stand on the button and the water goes and the wheel spins. Everything else is still moving, but the wheel will fucking like spin, 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 skip, spin, 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 skip, and it's not like a jerk. It literally like insta frame changes the position of the wheel, which, especially considering that there's parts on that wheel that you're supposed to be platforming off of, that's a problem. I had one instance where I jumped up and I did a downward thrust attack. There's another thing that never mind. Anyways, but I got stuck mid-air for about a second and a half, which was just long enough for the other enemies on the screen to fucking come kill me. There was nothing I could do. I'm just stuck, hanging in the air, about 5 feet off the ground, unable to do anything. And I don't know why. It just is. And that's just on the technical side. On the purely artistic side, it's a decent looking game. It's not gonna blow you away visually, but what's there is solid looking, but there are some weird fucking artistic choices here. One, the design for Sargon feels a little too try hard to be cool. The whole shaved head and the swoopy thing. I don't like the way he carries his fucking swords. It bothers me, because they are not small swords. These are big fucking long curved blades. like 3.5, 4-foot blades, right? So
Yeah.
these are big boys. When he runs, he carries one upright and the other downward. And so when he's standing, it's like a fucking V on either side of him. I'm like, it's just, who's going to carry and run that way with those things?
He is.
It feels so fucking off balance to me. It's like, it's so, I will say the more I've played, that's bothered me less, but it definitely felt wrong and it looked wrong to me visually right from the jump. It started to fade into the background, but it's prominent enough that I noticed and I'm like, I don't like that. The bigger issue I have here with the artwork is just the art design, the style is, they've done a really cool job of designing this really visually interesting world. However, again, this is one of those, I think you tried too hard to make it actiony and cool, because everything has this embellishment of like blue and red and white swipey stripes, and it clashes with the rest of the art direction of the world. It's like somebody took Crayola markers and drew over a really gorgeous painting. And it sticks out like a sore thumb. And it feels wrong. And it squicks me out. That said,
Dang it.
no, I'll keep going. Like, I want to
You
see...
sure?
I am, because I can... Just because it bothers me doesn't mean I won't deal with it to play a well-designed and crafted Metroidvania.
Okay.
So, because from everything I've seen and heard, it's really good. I just have some personal issues with, like I said, the art design and direction. And I'm curious too to see how bad the fucking bugs get. But that said, I still want to see the game that they crafted. And I can get through it and then look at it and go, these things didn't execute well, but I can at least see the complete picture that they were attempting to paint, even through its flaws. And I'd like to be able to see that. But in order to do that, you've got to play the whole thing. And I want to see what they do with the story. The story's interesting. I'm genuinely interested in the story. It's just, it could have used some more polish. And somebody in the art department should have hid the red and blue Crayola markers. But other than that, that's most of what I've been playing. A little bit of Balatro sprinkled in here and there, which again, I think we're going to end up coming up on an episode, doing an episode that's talking about bedtime games.
I'm glad we're not recording it this week, because I haven't had a chance to play Balatro near bedtime yet.
You should.
I'll give it a try, but most of my bedtime has been home, food, sleep.
Yeah, I feel you. I get that. But no, when you do try it though, reset your settings, your visual settings to defaults on Balatro.
Gotcha.
It creates a whole vibe. So, but I think that's a good place to leave it so that we can take a minute and talk about our awesome sponsor, Imaginary Authors, helping you up your scent game with fragrances for guys, gals, and non-binary pals, with awesome fragrances like Languages of the Glacier, one of my new favorites. It's got that very cool, crisp, clean smell to it. Also, more than just fragrances, perfumes, candles, oils, and bar soaps. And boy, howdy, let me tell you, the bar soap is a great clean. The candles are wonderful. it's not like one of those when you get a scented candle at the store and you go, this smells great, and then you take it home and light it and you're like, I can barely smell a fucking thing. No, their candles have that good strong scent, but not overpowering, so that you can actually enjoy it. Cannot recommend enough. So make sure you check them out. Hit the link in the show notes down below. Helps you, helps them, helps us. Everybody wins. It's the win-win-win. Go do it, imaginary authors. All that said, make sure you stay tuned. Wes and I were talking about credit where credit is due. Really fucking cool conversation that goes some really interesting and unexpected places. And we'll see you right after the break. And we're back with the third half of the show. This week we are taking a dive down the warp pipe.
Oh wow, love these pipes.
And we're asking the question, are we giving credit where credit is due? Joining me is my compatriot, Wes Evans.
Did you guys know that Googling ring light when dark mode is off is just as good as actually having a ring light?
It is. We've tested this theory. We know it works now. I can do the same thing to mine, because I've got Facebook up on the other monitor if I switch it over to like a Google.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that, believe it or not, I'm actually mindful of when we record, because we do put a video version of this up on YouTube.
Yes.
But it's admittedly the audio version is the better experience, I think. But don't let me discourage you from going on YouTube and watching this if that's your preferred. So, anyways, credit where credit is due. The recent indie darling Animal Well has raised the question, are we giving credit where credit is due? Because with the success of Animal Well, there's been a lot of talk and praise heaped on Dunkey, who started the publishing company,
Big
studio, yeah, that's published Animal Well. And I feel like, and I'm not even mad at this point. I just think I don't think it's on purpose, but it feels like there's more credit being given to Dunkey for Animal Well being amazing than to Billy Basso, who's the actual developer. And part of me is curious too, as to, yeah, it's Dunkey's company that published this, but given that it was Dunkey and Billy, it was almost a two-man operation at this point. Part of me wonders how much Dunkey may have actually had some influence, not actually making, but maybe, talking to Billy while he was working on it and taking some feedback and incorporating that into the game. And that's something I don't think you necessarily see in a larger scale format, like something that EA puts out from one of their studios. But here there might be a different relationship, actually. But that said, Billy is the developer here. Dunkey is, and I almost don't mean, I'm not trying to say this in a derogatory way here, but Dunkey is just the publisher. So the question is, are we giving credit in the correct proportions or ratios to who should be getting credit? Because I know I've heard, praise directed specifically to Billy, but it seems like Billy's name should be the one coming up more than Dunkey, and it's not.
I think a big part of it, simply put, is Dunkey already had a built-in audience, and Billy did not.
Mm-hmm.
However, with that built-in audience, that's not the same as making a game. right? I am by no means a professional game dev, as someone who, just recently picked it up as a hobby. But making a game, making a good game, and publishing a game, very two different skill sets, because making it, you or your team have to be good at coding and art and music and actual game design, right? You can make your game pretty as hell, but if it's not fun to play, the fact that there are no glitches and really, really good visuals, that's only going to carry you so far.
Mm-hmm.
Versus publishing requires you to know about marketing and getting your game out there. And a little bit, it's kind of like talent scouting as well, which is where I think if Dunkey is succeeding in anything that wasn't inherently part of already having his built-in audience, this is where it comes from.
Yeah.
And one thing I think that Dunkey, I don't want to say is failing on, more so recognizing his weaknesses on when it comes to this, is that he is going to struggle to realize what is a good game he doesn't like, which is something that publishers will have to recognize every now and then. Because anyone who has seen a bunch of his videos will know that he doesn't like JRPGs.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has openly said Big Mode will never publish one because he's only going to publish games that he likes. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Dunkey is a bad person for that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you Dunkey doesn't know game design because of that, right? What I am going to...
I think what we have here is a case of combination publisher and curator.
Yes.
And there's an art to that.
Absolutely.
I respect that. That potentially limits your opportunity to turn a profit, but it also says that you're holding a standard that somebody can rely on.
Right. And like I said, this is not so much as saying Dunkey doesn't recognize good games. More so he knows that he is weak in the field of, say, turn-based JRPGs. He cannot properly appreciate them, and as someone who's doing most of the publishing work himself, he can't do that.
Right.
And so, if someone were to present him, let's just say Sea of Stars was never made, right? And the developers of Sea of Stars presented it to Dunkey, and was like, look how great this is. He would be like, I can't properly judge this. And thus someone else would be getting the credit. Funny thing is, there actually was a YouTuber who was very vocal in trying to get Sea of Stars. He didn't publish it, but he was very heavily involved with the marketing, and they ended up taking him out of the game because he committed charity fraud.
Mm-hmm. I'm still not 100% certain he committed charity fraud. There's, I don't know.
I don't want us to get sued, so I will say this. If I were certain that he were innocent, in fact, if I genuinely believed he were innocent, or I thought there was a chance he was innocent, I would say so now.
But, no, I admittedly did not keep up with that story as anything else came out, but
Fair.
I don't know.
Moving on from Dunkey just a little bit, because I don't want this to feel like we're picking on him specifically, right?
No, this isn't even picking on him.
Right. It's not. It's certainly not. I just don't want this to be the sole focus. I'd say it's the conversation starter, because it's what got us thinking.
Yeah.
But take a look at how many times have you thought to yourself, wow, Devolver Digital published this game. It must be good when it comes to indie selection, right? Devolver might...
I'd say they've got a pretty high batting average. They're not batting 1,000, but they're solidly fucking up there.
Right.
I at least will always pay attention when I see Devolver's name stamped on something.
Absolutely. and they might provide good environments for indie studios to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they are the publishing company, not the developing company.
Maybe we need to stop calling Devolver and anybody else that kind of follows in its footsteps. Maybe we need to stop calling them and looking at this kind of doubles back to last week's, but maybe we need to stop looking at them and thinking them as publishers and start thinking of them as curators.
That's a really good way of putting it. Which is a
That's
skill
really
in
what
of
they
its own.
do. Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah.
And I'm finding myself more interested in curators than I would be publishers, honestly. I mean, that, like I said, that has a stamp to it that says that if you like these things, we are the place to be, because that's what we're gonna bring you. There's you and I were talking just a little bit ago before we hit the record about a new comic book publisher that's hit the scene recently, Distillery. And I told you, these guys are batting 1,000. Like, I will blindly purchase anything that they put their stamp on. I wouldn't go that far with Devolver, but pretty fucking close. Like, I will pay attention to anything they put their name on. I will probably be interested in 80% of what they put their name on, because not everything they do is to my taste, which is fine. And by the time it's said and done, I will probably purchase about 50% of what they put their name on. But no, I think that this curator side, Distillery, at least in comics, would kind of fall under that category for me too. Is they're only a publisher in the sense that as a curator they have to publish. They have to be the ones to publish it.
Right.
Like, that's more of a job duty or a job responsibility as a curator than it is that's the job title. So this is just going in levels to me now. Just layers and levels, and makes my brain happy.
But I think a big part of the problem, and I'm not blaming the publishers for this, right? Because they're giving these indie games a name. But for example, think of here's a really good one. Here's a game, I don't remember talking about it with you, but I feel like you've played it. What Remains of Edith Finch?
Oh, okay.
Okay,
so
let me ask you this. Who published that game?
I haven't played it.
Okay.
We'll get there, but who published it? Who did do the publishing of that? Why do I feel like it was EA?
No, it wasn't.
No.
It was an indie publisher. It wasn't Devolver. It was not Devolver. Think of other big names in indie publishing.
Oh.
Darn, I thought I was making a point here.
No, I think you might be making a point. I think you may have just made a point that you didn't intend to, but not a bad one. Fuck published this?
I'm gonna spoil the answer for you. It was Annapurna.
Thank you.
Now let me ask you. Now, if you didn't know the publisher, this next point's gonna be a little weaker. Who developed Edith Finch?
Ooh. All right, I'm cheating here, but in all fairness, it wasn't a name that I knew, but it's Giant Sparrow.
Yes. And the point I'm getting at here is that it's kind of this double-edged sword. Would we have heard of Edith Finch if it hadn't been published by Annapurna, this company that gave it this boost in order for it to get recognized in the first place? However, I feel like a lot of us are associating it more with Annapurna than we are with Giant Sparrow. And
Right.
now, what if Giant Sparrow wants to move publishers? Will they get
Hmm.
recognized? Sure, maybe they can put in the trailer from the developers of Edith Finch or whatever,
Yeah.
right? But putting that in the trailer doesn't attach it to your game's name, right? It's not Sid Meier's Civilization here, right? Where, because trying to do, say, Giant Sparrow's What Remains of Edith Finch, well, that's a mouthful.
Right. Your point that you've made has got me thinking about something else too. That another job duty of a curator's, of a curation publisher, is not just curating the games that they put out, but also curating the right audience to match them with. And I'm thinking about this because Annapurna has very much done that. So's Devolver. And that's another huge thing that comes with that curation, is curating that right audience and putting the right audience with the right games. So I'm just sitting here thinking about it, being really impressed by it, and now I'm not changing my mind necessarily. I think it's the real question that I think we missed is, are the right people, back to Donkey and Billy here in Animal Well, are the right people be getting the right credit?
I feel like, and I could have possibly come off this way. It wasn't my intention, however, I do acknowledge that I do misspeak sometimes. A lot of people feel like when you say you need to give credit to the developers, it feels like you're not giving any credit to the publisher at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it should never be, don't give Donkey credit for getting this game out there, because he stuck
Right.
his name to this, right? If this
Give Donkey
failed,
credit for what Donkey brought
Did.
to the table for the full equation here, because Animal Well, with or without Donkey, would have been Animal Well. Animal Well's success in that Donkey curated the game together with together with the right audience to make Animal Well a success. But that success still wouldn't have happened without an amazing game like Animal Well. So I don't think it's a crush. I think we were wrong from the outset, or that we were asking the wrong question. It's not a case of credit where credit is due, but the right type of credit to the right person, or credit for the right thing to the right person. I think maybe that's what's really missing from what's happening here. Is I think that's maybe what's been sticking in my craw a little, and not even something I'm upset about. It's got me thinking, kind of sticking in my craw. Is that I feel like that's a distinguishment that isn't being made, and it feels like it should be. And I think that practice should carry on beyond just the example of Donkey and Billy and Animal Well.
Absolutely. And I think giving publishers credit for making games is seeing some consequences outside of an indie dev makes the money but not the name attached to it. Because look at recent, at time of recording, shutdown of studios, 4 of Bethesda studios, including Tango Gameworks and Arcane Austin. Also, shout out to Alpha Dog and what was the other one? There was a 4th one that wasn't so much shut down, but absorbed into the Elder Scrolls Online. So
Right.
and that one gets forgotten a lot because they weren't closed, more so absorbed.
Right.
But point being,
those people aren't necessarily being put out of a job.
right, better to have. It's kind of like whenever I'm having a bad day at work, one of the things I tell myself to get me through the day is at least I have a job to hate.
Right.
But point being,
Oh boy, do I know that feeling.
But point being, because Microsoft valued Bethesda more than they valued Tango and Arcane Austin, they got laid off or they got shut down, even though the games they made, good and bad, fall under them. Tango made Hi-Fi Rush, the one game that Xbox made this last year that had overwhelmingly great reviews.
Right.
Starfield was a letdown. Forza Motorsport was a letdown. I'm not saying you can't have enjoyed those games, by the way, but they were disappointments. And Redfall, which we're coming back to Arcane Austin in a little bit, was a major letdown.
Oh yeah, that was a mess.
Arcane Austin, who made Redfall, also made Prey, which many are saying is one of the best in the... Gosh, why am I forgetting what the genre is called? The one where you can do just about anything. Interactive sim? Is that
Interactive narrative?
No. Immersive sim, that's it.
There
Immersive
you go.
Simulator.
Sorry, I had an interactive narrative on the brain from the last one.
From last recording, I know. But they one of the best immersive sim games. And then Bethesda, rather ZeniMax, I guess I should say, who's the proper publisher, not Bethesda. But
Right.
ZeniMax, the publisher, was like, hey, we're chasing down this live service rabbit hole. It worked for Elder Scrolls, so we're going to do it here, right? And so they made Fallout 76, which sucked at launch. They made Wolfenstein Youngblood, which still sucks. And they made Redfall, which took until the studio was shut down to just be a, I guess it's okay now, game.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so all of that was the decisions of the publisher. And the studio suffered as a result of their bad decisions. So we've got one where the developer doesn't get the credit for the good games, and one where the developer gets shat on for their one bad game that was made because the publisher forced them to.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I feel like the consequences of not giving proper credit where it's due could be headed.
I think my takeaway is in the grand scope of today's topic is, God, do I love curators.
Yeah.
Oh,
the indie
Devolver,
publishers who are great
Annapurna.
curators. Oh, yeah.
mhm.
And honestly, see a few more hits out of Donkey, I think Big Mode's got potential to be in there.
Yeah. Like he's off to the right start. He just, needs to repeat it.
Yeah,
To
it's
show
too early to
reliability.
Yeah, it's too early to put him in there, but I'm not going to say he can't do it.
Right? Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to see more out of Billy Basso. I'm excited to see what games
I'm
Donkey
interested at
curates
least.
from here on.
Right. It's a chance to watch somebody convey their taste by way of curating what they choose to publish. I think that's fucking interesting. So, all right, let's wrap this up. What do you say?
Final thought, let the publisher get their foot in the door, but make sure you're paying attention to who made the game, because you never know when they're going to move on, if they decide they don't want to stick with the publisher, if they decide they want to start self-publishing. Just make sure you're paying attention to who's making the game. Follow the talent.
Oh yeah. and follow the talent definitely.
But
and
don't-
it's okay to don't forget to recognize all the talents.
And don't forget that it's okay to say Devolver, Annapurna, and hopefully to be proven for sure, Big Mode are great curators.
Mhm.
And it's okay to say that the reason you tried the game is because those curators have said, this is a good game, we think people would like it.
Right. I feel like Annapurna doesn't always curate great stuff, but they at least always curate interesting stuff.
I was just about to say that very same thing.
Which there's something to be said for that too. It's there are times where I'm like, look, I don't need the greatest game. I want something I want to play an interesting game though. It might not be great. As long as it's interesting, that's what I want. And Annapurna scratches that itch.
I just find it hilarious. The same curating company / publishing company, whichever of the two we want to use,
Yeah.
that gave us Edith Finch also gave us Neon White.
Mm-hmm. Well, and to write credit to the right person here, it makes me, because the guy that did Neon White, the game before that, he did Donut County.
Yes.
I'm like, man,
How'd
that
you
is
go?
a big swing. And he nailed it.
He nailed it twice is the thing.
Yeah.
They're both great games, both very different games.
Like, man, that motherfucker's got range. You want to apply the music analogy. But yeah. Whew.
All right.
That's just cool shit all the way around. Oh, this was fun.
Oh yeah.
This was fun. We should do this again. This is fun. All right. We're going to wrap this up. Big shout out and thank you to my homeboy Wes Evans for joining me this week on today's topic. Thank you to everybody that tuned in and listened. Do the social things, the subscribe, shares, comments, whatever. That threw up in my mouth a little. You know what it all is. It helps. Anyways, more importantly though, shout out to our awesome sponsor, Imaginary Authors, helping you up your scent game with fragrances for guys, gals, and non-binary pals. The biggest shout out to everybody that tuned in and listened this week. We hope you had some fun, and if you did, and we got you thinking a little, we want to hear from you. So hit the link in the show notes to our Discord. Come jump in the conversation with us. Tell us who some of your favorite curators are. Is it Devolver? Is it Annapurna? Is it one that maybe we don't know yet, or we're not familiar with their handiwork by name yet, and we fucking should be. Tell us about it. I want to know if I'm missing something good here. Other than that, I think we've covered it. Say goodnight, everybody.
Mwah. Good night, everybody.
You've been tuned to the World 1-1 podcast, powered by the World 1-1 Podcast Network. Press start to engage your mind. Peace!